Hello, I'm Heather McClure from Fray Angelico Chavez History Library at the New Mexico History Museum. Thank you for coming to Creative Mornings, June 2020. Today, we are joined by artist Nina Elder on the topic of insecure. Nina Elder is an artist and researcher who focuses her work on changing cultures and ecologies. Nina advocates for collaboration, fostering relationships between institutions, artists, scientists, and diverse communities. She is the co-founder of the Wheelhouse Institute, a women's climate leadership initiative. Nina lectures as a visiting artist and scholar at universities, develops publicly engaged programs, and consults with organizations that seek to grow through interdisciplinary programming. Nina Elder is based in Albuquerque, but will be joining us from Alaska for this presentation. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello. I'm so grateful to the New Mexico History Museum for inviting me to speak with you all about the topic of insecurity. I have not experienced a more important time to consider stability, vulnerability, strength, and insecurity as now. As you can see, I'm speaking to you from a glacier. I'm in the Wrangell Mountains in Alaska. Although I spend a great amount of time here, my home is on the Pueblo land that are currently called Albuquerque. I'm thankful to those who came before me on these lands in New Mexico and Alaska and everywhere in between. I'm going to start sharing my presentation now, and I apologize ahead of time for any technical glitches. This is an interesting situation. The roaring sounds you hear behind me are the glacier dropping rocks into the water. I was trying to figure out why being asked to talk about insecurity merited a quick and easy yes from me. Most people do not like thinking about insecurity. It brings an air of discomfort and unpredictability and vulnerability. It makes people feel shaky, wobbly, and tottering. But I'm unique. I guess I'm a cheerleader for insecurity. I understand that as part of any ecology, everything is always in a state of change. Stability and permanence are fantasies. The future is constantly slipping into the past. We are spinning and hurtling through space on a ball of stardust. Seas slosh in their tides, moons fluctuate, water evaporates, this glacier grumbles. Evolution is happening as orchids respond to smoke in the Amazon, as polar bears lose their glacial ice, as lichens reckon with the massive increases of carbon in the atmosphere. Inside of you, whole ecosystems of bacteria and microbes are living out millions of lifetimes. The basis of life is change. And with change comes insecurity. Let's take a closer look at the word insecure. The etymology of insecure is very strange and contains a double negative. At the root is curae, Latin for care. Se is without, in is not. So taken literally, instability means not without care. I interpret insecurity to mean with care. Insecurity is a condition of caring. Care implies a relationship. If we acknowledge that the world is always changing, then to be in authentic relationship with the world, we must allow ourselves to not always be stable. Change provokes many emotions: nostalgia, grief, melancholy, homesickness, fear. But change also allows for hope, imagination, innovation, improvement, growth, and transcendence. I want to understand how I can relate to things even as they change, especially because they change. Because glaciers have become a measuring stick of climate change, it is especially an honor to be here on a glacier speaking with all of you. Glaciers are often described as fragile. They are, and they are not. Glaciers carve and shape the landscape around them. They gouge and rip and rumble like bulldozers. Glaciers are at once vulnerable and immensely strong. I desire to not be rigid and inflexible, but to allow myself to feel vulnerable to the complexity of change. I want to be responsive to what surrounds me, even if that forces me to take on new forms. I want to move and be moved. The surface of a glacier is covered with cracks and ripples, stretch marks and slumps, because it has changed to fit its surroundings. If there is any one reason that I am an artist, it is because I care deeply for this tumbling, spinning ball of stardust and how life upon it unfolds. I have a relationship with this glacier. I have watched it morph and primarily shrink over the years. As it transforms, I want to observe what that change looks like, sounds like, and feels like. This glacier surprises me and sombers me, and sometimes fills me with glee. This caring has allowed me to explore what it means to care for something very, very different than myself. This thing is thousands of years old and half a mile thick. It roars and burps. Part of it are always dangerous and distant. Parts of it are familiar and fun. I feel empathy for this much larger than human entity. Caring for glaciers has taught me about loving something, even as it disappears. It has given me a practical understanding of deep time and distance. More than anything, this landscape offers up metaphors that I have returned to repeatedly. For many years, I have made drawings and work about geologic displacements, piles of rocks, strip mines, bomb craters, pit mines. I want to show the impacts that consumerism has made in the landscape. I want to entice people to look at the evidence of industry that is so easy to camouflage and so much more comfortable to forget. The way that the majority of humans exist is only made possible through minds like these. Massive, rumbling, highly engineered scenes of extraction. The camera that shot this video, the internet that is streaming this video into your home, the device on which you're watching this, even the chair you are sitting on, the clothes you are wearing, the contact lenses on your eyeballs, the medicines you might have taken this morning, the mug which held your coffee. None of this would be possible without extractive industry. We have created systems that stabilize dominant society, and in the process have destabilized the earth and those who live closest to it. Vast portions of the planet have been sacrificed. I uphold these sites as monuments to what has been destroyed and obfuscated in that process. Ecological systems, indigenous cultures, workers' rights, and the interconnectedness of life. These holes in the ground will not go away, but the power that created them can and will be challenged. This is a drawing of a quarry in Indiana. The stone that came from this quarry became the United States Pentagon. This delicate and crumbling place gives me hope when I think about the seeming dominance of the United States military. Very powerful things can erode. I've thought deeply about monuments, something that is the center of much needed public dialogue and action right now. I have wondered if change is the only constant. Why do we try to make something permanent by carving it in stone? Because of my relationship to geology and to glaciers and to mines and to quarries, I see stone as something that has been formed and something that will keep on transforming. This perspective led me on a long, slow process of building a public monument for Indianapolis. I was drawn to that city because it is surrounded by quarries. It holds a great number of very outdated monuments, and it has a reputation for upholding some of America's worst values: racism, segregation, and wild cycles of corporate exploitation and disinvestment. It is a place where change seems to either happen way too fast or not at all. Over 2 years, I worked with an incredible team and made a monument that does something very different than others. First, we started by hosting community conversations about change and permanence. We discussed gentrification and gerrymandering, local delights, and the unsung heroes of the neighborhoods. I met barbers and grandmas and ministers and crossing guards and activists. Among the different ways that these interactions were documented and celebrated, I collected words that people used to describe their community activities. I noted how often these words are also used in geology: evolve, erode, permeate, emerge, build up. I made a list of these words and cast them as a bronze plaque. We sought out a block of limestone that had been part of a public fountain. When the land became private, the fountain was removed. It is unclear if this is a pedestal waiting for an object or something to be used much more humbly. It is a comfortable place to sit and rest. It is the right size to stand upon and address a crowd. But this rock is beginning to crumble and crack. This limestone block symbolizes both strength and neglect. Into this block, we carved holes that will allow rain to seep in, the frost to expand, and cracks to form. I was granted access to an unwanted steel monument that had been taken down. From this metal, we created quarrying tools, chisels and wedges that can be used to fracture any stone. Each set of tools was mounted in a frame and labeled with a word that symbolizes both social and geologic transformation. We arranged all of these elements in a gallery. We invited people of traditional power: politicians, educators, bankers, lawyers, publishers, curators. And we invited all those people from the initial community conversations. The community members were invited to speak, and the folks with traditional power were asked to listen. And together, we witnessed the shared values and interconnectedness of immigrants, water quality activists, advocates for trans youth, the energies of Afrofuturism, and the demands for equitable access to education and healthcare. The quarrying tools were distributed to the community members, a not entirely symbolic act that the power to build up and the power to destroy flows through connected and engaged communities. Several of the tools were quickly put to use. The marked and shattered stone will be installed at the new Indianapolis Justice Center. It is a monument to the changing shape of power. It will crumble. This block will not be maintained, and it will eventually return to the soil. This decision was made early this year, before I knew that Ahmaud Arbery had been killed by white vigilantes in Brunswick, Georgia, before George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police, before police killed Breonna Taylor as she slept in her bed. As the force and funding of police come into public questioning, I am honored and invigorated to create something that will remind law enforcement, judges, and lawyers that power is relational, that it takes shifts, and it can always take on new forms. In recent months, I have become increasingly interested in the fraying of power. This moment in time, this very insecure moment, seems to be a time of fissures and ruptures and breaks. But as we are facing social, ecological, and political upheavals, I am determined to focus on what emerges. I found this strap deep in a forest. It is very mysterious and intriguing. It is the most exhausted thing I have held in my hands. This strap has held great weight. It has been trusted. My meticulous drawing process allows me to seek out the faith that a person once invested in this strap. Looking at these forms, I contemplate something that might appear obsolete, used up, of no use. Making these drawings of the strap in this frayed form allowed me to understand the strength it once had. What happens when the thing we trust fail, and when the things we depend on break? They continue to hold an aura of that relationship. This strap is a document of everything it ever did. Although the opposite of broken is whole, you cannot unbreak something. These drawings ask what comes after the breaking point. In exploring this thing that is done doing what it was meant to do, I feel gratitude. I want to dignify what remains. What remains? What stays intact? What needs to be preserved? These questions inspire me. Last autumn, with the education team at Site Santa Fe, we asked nearly 500 school children what they thought needed to be protected. We compiled thousands of words, and in rewriting them, I created this mural in the education wing at Site Santa Fe. The answers are poignant, funny, and very profound. The repetition of certain words showed what the kids were most deeply concerned about. Immigrant children, my mom, rivers, clean air, me from getting shot, polar bears, trees. As I talked to the kids during this process, it was clear that they see their own futures as bound with everything on this list. The insecurity of the environment and the social injustices of our time makes them insecure and forces them to be aware of their larger interconnectedness. In this density and scale, this mural also asks audiences, what are you protecting for these kids? What do we need to do now to express our care for their future? Working with young people motivates me to keep finding ways to demystify and dignify change. I had terrible growing pains growing up, but now I have nothing but gratitude for my able adult legs. Climate devastation is terrifying, and it is beginning to create much needed behavioral changes in what we consume and how we understand our impacts. Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been fighting racial injustice, and the whole world is finally starting to join in that struggle. To be in denial of change is not only unnatural, but does not allow for a more holistic future to emerge. When we start to implicate ourselves in the change, we go through the growing pains, and then we also learn how to be nimble. I have often said of the future that it will not be the same, but it might be beautiful. That thought has become the title for my newest ongoing work. This summer, with the support of the National Performance Network and the Speranza Foundation, I'm creating a multimedia project that addresses change and impermanence, looking to breakage and emergence, human legacies, and geologic time. These are puzzle stones, rocks that have been shattered by extreme temperature shifts. Here, they have been recently ejected by a glacier. They are enigmatic and alluring, fragile and strong. I am inspired to make this work because we can witness these rocks in the midst of their transformation. This time of rapid change asks us to be involved and responsive as it happens. We cannot wait to see how the world remakes itself. I am finding it increasingly important to explore how we care for something even as it crumbles. I started this work because I often feel that the world is in pieces, and I have no sure way to reassemble it. But this state of insecurity and crumbling does not stop me seeking what might come next. Because I know this planet is forever impacted by my actions does not mean I am willing to abandon it. To acknowledge our roles in systemic oppression and injustice does not mean that we have fixed the problem. I wanted to see what would happen if I asked people to carefully and self-consciously pick up these rocks that are very unstable. How do we engage with change and take an active role in change, even if that is very uncomfortable and causes moments of instability? How do we act in a way that asserts that even though the future will not be the same, it might be beautiful? I come to Alaska every summer to explore relationships. The relationship between a glacier and a mountain. The relationship between myself and a glacier. The relationship between myself and other people. It is an extraordinary privilege to spend this time exploring, contemplating, and seeking meaningful metaphors for our times. Glaciers carry a huge amount of gravel and rock within them. At their edges, like where I am sitting now, they dump this material in terrific messy piles. Some of this might have been traveling along inside the ice for thousands of years. Other rocks might have been picked up just a few years ago. The mountains hold the glacier, and the glacier pushes and carves against the mountain. Each gives form to the other, while each is formed by the other. They carry the marks from one another. They carry the material from one another. So let's go back to a little bit of Latin. Errare means to wander, to roam, to ramble. Errare also means to be wrong, to be mistaken. Erratic means to move with inconsistency, to wander. Erratic also means something foreign, something new, or different, or unexpected. Erratic is also the term for the geologic material that is transported by a glacier. I wonder what I carry in myself. What responsibility do I have towards what I carry? Might I choose to put down that weight? Can I carry the weight for another? How do we know what one another is carrying? So, from this dynamic glacier, what I want to communicate is this. Keep changing. Allow transformation. Push against what you cling to as permanent and see how that too might be part of a larger process. Care deeply, even if it is scary and heartbreaking and tumultuous. Care so much that it might change you. Allow yourself to be insecure. It might be beautiful. I'm so thankful to share this time with you. I'm so thankful that the internet allows me to communicate with you from Alaska. And I'll ask Creative Mornings to share my website information with you. So if you have any questions or comments, we can communicate that way. And I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.